Hello! How's everyone? Hi. Hello to everyone who's in the chat. Hope my voice is loud enough for this. Because of course I am the king of audio issues. But yeah, I'm okay. You ought to add a piracy emote for diversity, Smug. I hate smug scribing, and yet you've smug scribed for 29 months. Thank you very much, Autumn, for the smug scription. I appreciate it. I love that this has become a thing now. Once upon a time it was ironic, and now it's genuine. Now it's just called smug scribing. But it's funny. It's our thing. Again, I hope I am loud enough. I am in the red on the Streamlabs audio thing, so I'm going to hope I am. I also want to thank FunkCJA456 and Gordishiano for the follow. Ever since I last streamed, it's been 3 weeks, because in the meantime, you'd think, because I was talking about that whole credit sequence, oh, he's been working on this for 3 weeks now. No. In fact, I got the credit sequence done. I started on Thursday and I finished it yesterday. But the thing is, I'm currently working on my university thesis, which is actually sitting open next to me on my computer. So I've been working, you know. I went from one traumatizing experience right into another traumatizing experience. You won't believe it. After I finished Darkest Dungeon, I had to do statistical analyses, guys, of my own fucking dataset, statistical analyses, right? And then I had to do, and I hate doing the coding for that. I did the coding, and then I got all the stuff done, and then I wrote it up, and then I sent it to my advisor, and my advisor was like, yeah, but this thing here is wrong. And then I went back and I looked at it, and then I had to do even more coding to fix the thing that was wrong. Angel has smug scribed. Thank you very much for the smug scription, Angel. A hype train is close. Ooh. Could we get a tier list hype train? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Streamlabs bot is working now with a Discord invite. That is good. I love to see it. For some reason it keeps turning itself off, but I'm glad it stayed on for this stream. But yeah, it's been a very busy period leading up to this, but I'm glad we can do this little sort of fanfare send-off of Season 2, and then we'll move on to other stuff. I'm still not sure what I want to stream. I will be resuming weekly streams on Saturdays now, because I hand in my thesis on Tuesday, and the other piece of coursework after that I've already finished and handed in, so pretty much on the 9th of May, I'm finished. I'm done. I've finished my third year. So then I will have more time available for streams and stuff. I'm still going to keep it really to one time a week, because there's other stuff I'd like to be working on as well. But yeah. Anyway. Birthday. It is also Autumn's birthday on that day. It marks the day of which evil entered the world. It'll be a great birthday. I hope you have some stuff planned for that. It'll be a good time, I'm sure. Anyway. The tier list, which I have curated, I put a screenshot out on Twitter yesterday of the tier list I've curated for this experience. Let me show you. Here we are. This is the tier list. Here we are. Now, let me just get it open on my page and get Streamlabs up. So, this is, in fairness, I could probably zoom in a little more. Hold on. Let me try and zoom in a bit. There we go. Okay, that's lovely. Now, below we have all the participants of the Darkest Dungeon Season 2. I've memorized the names, I know, because I went through and I was making the credits, so I know whose name is which. Like, this is Agent, this is Arishay, this is Fortier, Austin, Autumn. I know who these people are. This is Bobberman. I still love this. Oh, man. I haven't touched Darkest Dungeon since we finished. I'm that scarred from it. But we have everyone here who participated, both living and dead, and we are going to go through and rank how well they did in this season. It's just a whimsical thing. I felt very whimsical doing this. How long is the stream going to be? It's probably not going to be 3 hours. It's probably just going to be about an hour. We're talking about each for a couple of minutes. There's about 30 people in this roster, meaning it should be about an hour, and then it's like, I think, 3 minutes on a vote of thanks. So an hour and 3 minutes, really. Although, then again, I do remember last year, like about a month ago last year, I was talking about my experience in a nightclub, and I went on for 2 hours and I didn't even realize. So for all I know, this will be a 2-hour stream. Yeah, should take a long break off of Darkest Dungeons after this list. Like, yeah, absolutely. It's been almost, what is it? It's May? So it was like 10 months. Well, we officially finished in April, so it would have been 9 months that campaign took. We're taking a very long break of Darkest Dungeon. I did want to jokingly announce, oh yeah, we're doing Season 3, but no. Because either I'm going to get people's hopes up or I'm going to terrify people that that's all I stream. Anyway. So yeah, also again, I don't know what I'm going to stream after this. I'll take a look at some games. We're definitely going to be taking a bit of a break from Darkest Dungeon, XCOM, that kind of stuff, and we'll just focus on playing some regular games, some random stuff I feel like doing. So let's start. God, please no season 3. I can't put Bob Men through that again. Let's start with the announcer on April 1st. I'm going to have to wait a whole year for that bit. It'll be a good bit. I'm going to have to wait. I'm going to start off first with Agent T70. What a tragic case. Agent T70. What was it? It was like episode 21. I just got back from Christmas break. It was the day after I just got back from Christmas break, and he died from blight. It was extremely tragic. It was an extremely bad fuck up. Well, partially a fuck up, partially RNG fucked me up there, but it was tragic because Agent was our only flagellant, and he was one of the best people we had in the team. My man can only take so many calamari trying to mentally screw me. Posture check, thank you, Angel. The flagellant, I'll talk about with each of these. I'll talk about their specific contributions, but I'll also talk about the value of their class and what they did as a class. So the flagellant I've learned is, well, ever since I started playing it 4 years ago, the flagellant's a very good bleed class, but I have learned recently they actually provide a very good heal. I didn't really regard this character as a healer. Always regarded him as like a frontline DPS bleed character, but then through my mind was widened, my mind's eye finally opened when I went on the Darkest Dungeon Discord and people talking about Flagellant as being like not just a support healer, but like a dedicated healer. And that, I was very surprised by this because he does have some very interesting heal moves that require him to go below a certain HP threshold. And that's conditional healing, so it's not the best thing to rely on, but he also does have Reclaim, or I think Redeem, which gives you restoration or recovery. Is like the healing over time sort of thing, which can be quite good, I've realised. RNG just saw them and said, "You, my child, will be killed by the dice." The Agent was a very tragic case because Agent was a great addition to the bleed team. The bleed team, which was Arache, the Duchess, Liloli, the Butcherbird. We had the Jester as well as a backup. And I believe we had the Occultist, which was usually Bobberman. I remember Bobberman because in our first fight in the Crimson Court against the Crocodilian, Bobberman almost died, and it was really fucking funny. But point of the matter is that Agent was a really valuable asset as a flagellant. He did a lot of good work, and his passing was extremely tragic. So, when we take a look here, we have the 6 stages I've ranked. We have a God Amongst Mortals. That's tip of the top. It can't get any higher than this. Literally was never a problem. Fearsome Warrior, this is like you were great. You were a reliable asset to the team. A Warrior of fine contributions, you were good. I could use you. You were good in the team. It was worth bringing you along. And now when we get to the 4th position, a middling individual, this was like you were there. Like we brought you as a backup. You were around. Like we had you in the team, and you did okay. You did what you needed to do. Bench warmer, like I rarely took you out. You were just sort of in the roster, hardly used. And when you were used, you probably weren't that great anyway. The compositions you were in weren't that brilliant. And then the final tier, who the fuck are you? In which I just don't even know to what extent I used you, or to like whether or not this is even your original class that I had you. Like, if you're down here, my condolences. You were just not used. I will take this and I'll put it in the Discord and I'll ping everyone here in the list about where they ended up. But I think for Agent, he died too soon to be a God Amongst Mortals, but he was definitely a fearsome warrior. He deserves to be here. He did extremely well. And as our only flagellant, he was amazing. So, Agent, rest in power. You were a fearsome warrior. Now, Arache, the Duchess. We all know my thoughts on the Duchess class. The class we specifically use beyond the meme of like Lady Demetrescu thing. There's 2 editions of the Duchess. You have the Human Duchess. No, you have the original Duchess class by S Purple, which is a transformation class. And people unfamiliar with Darkest Dungeon, a transformation class is where the character gets an increased range of skills. Oh, actually, no, not increased range. They get to use all of them, but some are conditional and then turning into the monster. So the original transformation class is the Abomination, where you can use them in their human form or in their monster form. And with the Duchess, you had a similar thing with the original Duchess. The problem with the original Duchess is that a lot of their moves in human form weren't that great. I didn't find them to be that amazing, and also a lot of the damage you did from your regular moves weren't that good. I just generally didn't find them to be that great. Additionally, oh. Hey, what are you barking at? Hey, mouse, go away, go away. Sorry, I am home alone and my dog's here. And they get a little bit nervous when no one's in the house. They just start barking at random things. Staring at him right now. I don't know what he's staring at. Anyway, sorry. Weird dog aside. The Dutch's original class tended to be quite a liability to the team, and the reason was that you also have the affliction virtue thing where oi oi peeps, hey, I don't know nothing, welcome, nice to see you. We're just going through. Agent has been ranked in the penultimate top tier. We're talking about Arache now. And what I was going to say is that typically with every hero, you have an affliction and a virtue chance when you reach 100 stress. With the original Duchess class, you actually didn't get that opportunity. What you got was, if she hit 100 stress, she became, I think, ravenous, and it meant that she was just completely out of control. In the same way that the flagellant doesn't get a virtue, they get guaranteed to go rapturous, in which case they also get more powerful, but they get out of control. Which meant that if you brought the Duchess along, you kind of needed like a dedicated support team to keep them in check, because otherwise when they hit 100 stress, they were just impossible to control. My thoughts on Duchess are biased because I'm using a private rework. Okay, because what I was going to say is I use the Human Duchess rework. The Human Duchess rework removes all of the stuff with a transformation class and makes her... So it gives her 7 moves to use in the original skill set. So that means that you can only take 4. You don't have access to all of them now. Wait, shit, how do I dry my hands with no towel? Shake your hands. You use Vice, kid. Why the medieval English? But yeah, the Human Duchess was a more traditional class in terms of how it worked. You had 4 skills that you took along with you, and she also had a chance to get a virtue if she got 100 stress. But what made her really, really good was her ability to be put in bleed parties. So she now her sort of base swing move, which usually I don't think did anything, didn't have any bonuses against bleeding enemies, had a ton of bonuses against bleeding enemies now. So it meant that bringing her to the Crimson Court or the Warrens was like she was a given asset for the team. Additionally, she had a riposte move that meant she got Aegis, which is like whatever move she gets hit by, she doesn't take damage. And also the riposte is just insane. You get all of the additional buffs against bleeding enemies in that riposte move. You have a move that would also stun them. You had a move that would also bleed everyone. You had a move that would like eat an enemy, and if you killed them on the eat, you get loads of HP back. It was like border overpowered, but I think it was also like, if you have a good team with them in the bleed party, like, this is just what you deserve. You've mastered the class. Arache was literally never a problem in this team. Arache was always a great benefit to have for the Crimson Court. We didn't use them in the boss fights, all of them, because a lot of the boss fights had different gimmicks. For instance, for Countess, you just had to dodge because all of her moves, I'm pretty sure, do stress damage. And for Baron, I believe we used Arache to beat the Baron. I'm not sure, but I did use the Duchess in my private playthrough to beat the Baron. So the Duchess has always been a good class to have along. I've used them to beat the Flesh as well. It's just, they're just a good class. Arache was always good to have around, and for that reason, God Amongst Mortals. We didn't get to take them into the Darkest Dungeon because, fortunately, I guessed I decided against taking a bleed party, and I was right, because enemies in the Darkest Dungeon are not very susceptible to bleed. We instead decided to use Blight, and that was a lot better, so there we go. 4-tier Austin. 4-tier Austin is a very, very old member of the... Ain't the Duchess a rival to the Goth Lady? Yeah, the Duchess in the lore of the class is like the rival to the Countess. So it's meant to be that the Duchess is helping your estate because... they want to go and take the Crimson Court for themselves, which I think is very cool lore as well. I mean, if we're talking about the modded class in of itself, again, S Purple's work, which, as you can tell, is always a little bit suspicious in regards to the suggestiveness. The Duchess is, I think, it really fits the Barassa heavy line art style very well. I like the lore of it. I like the design of the character. I think it fits with the whole vampire insect stuff as well. I mean, even in the original class, the transformation that she'd become this like monstrous leech, I really enjoyed. So across all counts, the Duchess is a god amongst mortals, and Arache's contribution cements from there. I just remembered that turf that said a trans woman said she was going to dry her hands on her penis at a bathroom. What? Oh, no paper towels? Good thing I've got this. What the fuck? Turfs aren't real, man. Jesus. Anyway, 4-tier Austin. 4-tier Austin was competed in the first Darkest Dungeon season when I used to stream off Xbox. That's how I'd do it. Shut up, Twist. And there was a very hilarious incident where E-Pike like killed them pretty much because of they were afflicted and they like pushed them in front of the Swine King and killed them. But 4-2 Austin also got the Houndmaster again this run, which was quite good. Unfortunately, I don't think we got much opportunity to use them. We had sometimes if someone needed like to get one of their quirks removed or locked in place, 4-tier would get brought in the bleed party. I think we took them a couple of times to the Crimson Core. In regards to the moves the Houndmaster has, the whole Hound's Harry is very good in dealing a lot of bleed. And when the main focus isn't actually doing a lot of damage, but instead giving the buffs to the Duchess, who does a lot of the damage, it's good when you couple it with other people and then put it in a comp. 4-tier is actually quite good. I just don't think we had much opportunity to actually use 4-tier. She was like, I've met a trans woman in a bathroom and was so normal about it, describes her very trans misogynistically, and then she said she was going to dry her hands on her penis because the dryer was broken, and then a trans woman found out about this and said she was actually going to wipe her hands on her jeans. Yeah, TERFs aren't real. It's fucking ridiculous, TERFs. That's just such a funny story. I actually remember, just briefly off topic, in vain of that, there was something about an airport that I saw, in America that had gender-neutral bathrooms, right? And you hear all this stuff about, like, oh, trans people are going to be weird in bathrooms and all of this and all of that stuff. But the only thing I saw was a cisgender woman walking into the bathroom, recording with her camera, going up to random people and asking them what they thought of the gender-neutral bathroom. So, like, it's such just a fucking false moral panic. The only people I've seen be weird in bathrooms are cisgendered people. Like, anyway, Houndmaster's pivotal to Mark and Bleed teams for me. Yeah, I agree that a Houndmaster's good for a Mark team, and I am always, before I did this season, we didn't bring the Mark party out a lot, but usually, like, Mark party was my bread and butter. I love taking them out. So 4-tier Austin in Season 1 would have been a massive addition to the team. They also have the Hounds treats, the dog treats, which help a lot as well. But we just, in this run, didn't get to specifically use 4-tier a lot. Additionally, as well, the Houndmaster, I always struggle as well to define how I want to use them, because they have so many good abilities that it actually confuses me a bit. Because the Houndmaster has the dodge, which goes into the dodge meta, because if you keep stacking the guard move, your dodge gets so ridiculously high that enemies just can't hit you. So the Houndmaster becomes pretty much invincible. That being said, you also have the Blackjack move, so if you put them to the front, you have a good stun move. You also have the Cry Havoc, which involves you having to go to the back. You have a lot of moves that clash where either you need to put them in the front or in the back to get the full to get the full usefulness of it. Which I know sounds dumb because that's how you organize parties, but more so that there was just so many different ways I wanted to use the Houndmaster that I ultimately just didn't know how to use them, and a lot of the time it just ended up being a support sort of damage role. There's only one bad skill on HM in my opinion, and that's only because of RNG. Cry Havoc. I think Cry Havoc's good if you have no other stress heal move, and I've learned the hard way through this season that when you're going on long campaign missions, you need to have a stress healer of some kind, because otherwise it's just an untenable mission. But that being said, yeah, I agree, the RNG swing on it makes it an unreliable stress heal. 66 66 chance to heal 2 stress on Apprentice. Yeah, and it's not even that much of a stress heal. I'm pretty sure on the higher ones it's like 6 or 7, which you can buff to be higher. But when you have the Jester right there, that I'm pretty sure even without the Maxim's head or whatever for the stress heal, they do like 13 stress heal guaranteed. It's a bit hard. So 4-tier did help us defeat the Countess quite easily. So I think on that record, it's gonna be... We're going to put them a Warrior of Fine Contributions, and they're going to be towards the bottom of this tier. 66. Now, okay, Autumnal Anarchy. Okay. You see, you have to understand how much it actually pains me that Autumn was as good in this season as she was. Because not only did Autumn get in the roster, she got one of arguably the best classes in the base vanilla sort of roster. You hear a lot of people complain about, oh, but the Leper's accuracy, like, oh, they miss all the time. If you just give them an accuracy trinket, that doesn't become a problem. And then their only major drawback doesn't exist anymore, meaning the one thing that was holding back all their overt great abilities doesn't exist, so they become an insanely powered class. Autumn as the Leper, or rather this Leper in particular, I remember in the final fight against the last boss, was consecutively hitting 59 crits. Because of the supplemented accuracy and crit accuracy boosts. accuracy, the crit boost given by the Jester in the team. And yeah, Autumn fucking decimated the last boss. It was... I don't use the mod skin. Who is that fella? Oh, it's for Owl Knight. It's for Order of the Owl or something. I really like the skin for the Leper class. I really enjoy it. But yeah, Autumn as the Leper was insanely good, and it pains me to admit how good she was in this campaign. Her quirks, we managed to get to a really good level. She was always a frontline fighter. I don't think there was ever a point where she even hit death's door. It's actually, I've only just clocked, we never got a heart attack throughout that entire campaign. We never got a single heart attack. Which is quite impressive, because I checked the Darkest Dungeon Discord, and there's people who are like getting heart attacks in regular dungeons and shit. Like, so I was quite happy with that. But Autumn in particular was doing really well. I mean, the Leper class I love, again, a character with big sword, but also like the insane amounts of damage they do. They have a self-heal, which also heals stress. They have an ability to buff themselves, both on damage and on resistance. They're just a great all-around, not all-around, damage dealer tank on the front lines. Their really key weakness is move resist. If you get knocked back, it becomes an absolute pain to get the Leper to the front, which means a lot of fights where there's going to be dancing involved, the Leper becomes a conditional involvement. But because a lot of my party compositions in this season involved very static compositions of characters to have there, it meant that Autumn was always, or the Leper class which Autumn played, was always welcome to be in the front. Put me in God tier or you're a coward. I mean, I hate that I'm going to have to do it, but I think I am, because Autumn not only was consecutively 59 critting the enemy boss, she hit the fatal blow on the final boss, and there was literally never a chance in which Autumn was fucking over the team. Like, she missed a couple of times, but other than that, like, that's kind of expected for a Leper. Also, the Leper skin that she had was really cool. Generally, she got a really good role on the class. Her quirks were great. So I think it's going to be the top tier. Now, the question is, I think it's going to have to be ahead of Arache, I think. And the reason why it's ahead of Arache is because Arache, as great as they were, was also kind of a conditional pick. We only really got to use them in the Crimson Court or the Warrens. Anywhere else where we weren't bleeding enemies, they weren't that useful. And that's because without those bonuses to accuracy, to crit chance, and to damage, they miss quite a lot. They actually become, I think, maybe just a little bit better on accuracy than the Leper, but it's not that good. The accuracy really takes a hit if you're not bleeding the enemies. So Autumn currently is the top of the charts here. They are the god amongst mortals. And I think also, we'll go on, but I think they ended up being the best Leper in the roster that we had. Moving on to Beastly Drohan, I'm going to put you already in middling individual. Beastly Drohan was a useful healer. I think in this campaign I realized that I usually use occultists as frontline, not frontline, but dedicated healers. So I thought, oh, if I take an occultist, I don't need to take anyone else. But when we got the Warlord involved and we got other tank classes involved, I realized that the occultists just, like, you're really putting your faith in RNG to sustain your frontline. And that's not good enough. And while the Vestal does have less healing, at least it's consistent. Which meant that the Vestal class overall, I started to rely on more as a healer. If I ever took an occultist towards the end of the campaign, it would come with at least a support healer to help in that regard. But the Vestal became pretty much my dedicated healer throughout the campaign. Just annihilated an Emperor difficulty Civ game in preparation for our meeting, Smug. Where are your stuns on occultist? Okay, we'll address that. Where's the next occultist? Where's the next? Did we only have one occultist? No, Bobberman. Where's Bobberman? Bobberman's next. Okay, we'll discuss that on Bobberman. We'll discuss that. Autumn's preparing to beat me up in Civ 5, which would never happen because I'm just that good. Beastly Drohan, we had a lot of good Vestals in the team, but Beastly Drohan, whenever I took them, it was always just to replace someone else in the comp. I never remember taking them really just for their abilities. They didn't have any great quirks. And a lot of the time, they were just not that great to have, but we just needed it. Never happening because you keep running. I don't keep running, I just have a life, Autumn. I have things to do. Beastly Drohan, I like the Vestal for the heal, and I realized also I became extremely stun-pilled throughout this campaign, where I realized that stunning the enemy is actually better than just healing your team, because if I stun them, I don't need to heal, and I get to kill the enemy quicker, so I had that realization, so Dazzling Light on this character is always really good. I strictly play them as a sort of support healer, but yeah, Beastly Drohan, middling individual, didn't really contribute much to the team. Now, Bobberman, I think we can all say Bobberman was one of, if not the joke character of the roster. Bobberman with the Pepemia cultist. Uh, Stunning instead of healing is actually the Final Fantasy XIV white mage mentality. Well, I mean, it just works. The principle is just universal, isn't it? I don't need to heal any damage if I can just stop them dealing any damage, right? So it's a good way to govern. It definitely, I'm sure there's a lot more alternative ways of doing it in Final Fantasy XIV. In Darkest Dungeon, stunning the enemy is extremely valuable. I think it's one of the meta tactics to do, just to stop them doing anything. I mean, in the campaign, I remember we had the Plague Doc and the Vestal with stuns, and then we had the Crusader Hedgie, rest in power, with stuns as well. So when we're just completely stunning half the team every other turn, they just had no opportunity to do anything bad to us. Ounce of prevention versus pound of cure moment. But it was just stunning work. But anyway, the occultist, the Pepimi occultist that is Bomberman. Now, Bomberman we had throughout the entire campaign. Bomberman was like Bomberman fucking was rolling the dice on so many Death's Door checks at the beginning. I remember the amount of times Bomberman hit Death's Door and survived was extremely entertaining. Thank you for, sacrificing your mortal life almost for our entertainment, Bomberman. The skin they had was really funny. Again, the occultist, I sort of realized as I was going on throughout that the occultist isn't an always reliable healer. For the most part, I find they do issue decent heals, but there's always that one moment at the worst time where they roll a 0 or they issue a bleed and it just doesn't help. Wait, how many times did I tango with death? I mean, I'd say at least 5 times that you tangoed with death, which I'd say is more, which to my patting myself on the back here, I think that's the most number of times any character in the roster hit a Death's Door check. But you, 5 times, I'd say. And I definitely remember for a lot of fights you were, flashing red. But you were a reliable member of the team. I do like using the occultist for the pull move, where I clear the corpses and pull troublesome enemies at the back to the front. I like the debuff, and also the mark, which makes the occultist such an integral part of the mark party. I really enjoy using that. On the topic of using the stun, I always get nervous about having the flashlight up to maximum. When we had Bomberman in the Crimson Core, I think we should absolutely use that because we don't have a torchlight meter, meaning we can just use that freely, unless it debuffs you in some other way. But for the most part, I was extremely nervous about the logistics of the excursions we were going on. The last thing I wanted to do was be taking down our torchlight when I needed to be keeping it up. I could always take a Vestal as well for an additional heal for the Dazzling Light, which then sends the light back up, or a character that increases the light like the Arbalest or the Crusader, but then that means I have to take out a slot in the composition that could potentially be used for a better class just to counter the stun move. The stun is extremely reliable. I think the stun chance is really high for this move, which is why it's got such a big drawback on lowering the torchlight. But that being said, I just never used it because of that drawback. And in the end, we didn't really need it because we have other characters with stuns that, albeit less reliable, didn't incur those negative penalties on our torchlight. I just chattered my teeth mid-sentence. I don't know why I did that. Let me just take a sip of beer because I'm already talking so much. I only take a stack of torches per dungeon length. I have no problem with hands on medium or long quests. Hands, I believe, is -5 torchlight. And you got a maximum of 100, I believe. And the minimum threshold for the maximum torch is 75. So I guess if you have your torchlight very high, and you manage to keep it at that high level, you can get off 1 hand, 2 hands per fight, and you'd be fine. And I mean, you'd only need to use it, I think, once, because hands is so good. You stun one key member of the enemy party, and the battle's over quite quickly. But that being said, I just didn't like having the anxiety of it. I do play very safe in this game, and I've seen a lot of the higher skill players in Darkest Dungeon tend to use strategies that aren't necessarily safe, but when you plan everything out accordingly, you can play a little bit more risky, and it pays off quite well. And I know it's just torchlight, but simultaneously, the last thing I wanted to do, especially on the high-level dungeons, was stumble into a Swine Reaver with very high dodge on no torchlight. That's the last thing I wanted. So typically, the Occultist, I didn't take that move. But the Occultist overall was a great class. Bomberman was an extremely entertaining character to have in the roster. I wouldn't say they were a fearsome warrior. Ultimately, we didn't end up using them that much. But Bomberman, I would say, would go above 4 tier in the warrior of fine contributions. So Bomberman is there. Cassowary, the Fridge Hellion. The Hellion class, I mean, this is just another vanilla class with just a reskin that Cassowary got. But this character I don't remember using very often. I remember using it for the Brigand fight because we could use Iron Swan to hit the guy at the back. Additionally, I liked taking them for the double stun. The thing with the Hellion class, the Hellion's meant to be the sort of typical Berserker Barbarian. And the way that they're styled gameplay-wise is that they do have a lot of high damage output. But the thing is that usually for any move that isn't, I believe, Wicked Hack or a Bleed Out, for those moves, for every time you use it, you get a debuff. So, for instance, if you use Breakthrough, you get a damage debuff or a speed debuff. If you use Barbaric Yorp, you get a debuff as well. And I think the way it's meant to be is that the Hellion is exerting herself so much that she's getting tired, so she can't actually perform very well. And I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's a good way of balancing the character. Although that does mean a lot of those moves I just didn't end up using apart from Barbaric Yorp, because it was just better to have her at high damage capacity rather than be using all these different moves. Sorry, I realized this tier list is very just technical, so it might be it might be maybe a little bit more boring than some people want, but I just wanted to talk about this season before we ended it conclusive. I mean, it's already over, but you get what I mean. I just wanted to do this tier list. We talk about the individual contributions of each sort of character anyway, but I think a good way of going over their use is also how the character works. Bleed Out, Breakthrough, and Barbaric Yorp are her exhaustion skills. Wicked Hack, If It Bleeds, Iron Swan, and Adrenaline are normal. Okay, so that explains why I took that, because I took Wicked Hack, I took If It Bleeds. I actually took those 4 moves a lot of the time. I think maybe I would have traded out If It Bleeds for Barbaric Yorp, but most of the time I had a Hellion build that wasn't built around the exhaustion skills. So again, Cass was very good for using against the Brigand Cannon, and some other times when we wanted a stun or some heavy damage at the front. And also the Fridge Hellion skin, almost 20% ahead of average literacy. Are you talking about my stream, or are you talking about your Civ game that you're in, Autumn? Is that what you're talking about? Are you in a Civ game and you've got higher literacy than everyone else? My usual Hellion Civ, of course you are. My God. My usual Hellion setup is Bleed Out, If It Bleeds, Adrenaline Rush, and Iron Swan. Oh yeah, so that's for the Bleed. I mean, the Hellion does coalesce quite well with Bleed teams. I didn't tend to bring them because I just thought Arache was a lot better, because Arache can issue their own bleeding. But on top of that, they just do so much. And when I've already got 3 teammates behind me that are doing across the enemy party bleed, I don't need that additional thing with a Hellion. I sometimes replace Adrenaline Rush for Breakthrough when there's a lot of shufflers in a team. If you are fighting enemies that tend to shuffle you, for instance, if you're fighting the Shuffling Horror, the Shambler, it's good to bring Breakthrough for the first turn, because then it gets you back into the front position. But other than that, I just didn't really have much use for a lot of the exhaustion moves. So I think for Autumn's just joined the stream just to threaten me about how good she is at Civ. That's it. She's not here for the stream. She's just trying to whisper in my ear how good she is at Civ. Is it working? I don't know. I'd say Cass. I'd say go below either a middling individual or a warrior of fine contributions. You're already terrified. I'm not scared. I'm not scared at all. I think. Warrior of Fine Contributions is someone that I was using a lot, and to my knowledge, Cass wasn't used that often. I do believe we used them against the Prophet as well, a lot of the time. So they did have their uses, so I don't think they're middling individual. I think a Warrior of Fine Contributions, but we go at the bottom, would be good. Note that Bleed Out has a 20% damage mod, which is different from damage buffs, and I'll explain that later, on top of, it's 3 to 3, 5 to 3 bleed. I should actually play Civ 6, considering someone. No, don't play Civ 6, get Civ 5. Literally go on CD keys, go on G2A, get Civ 5, it's so much better. I have Civ 6, I got it for free, and ever since I touched Civ 5, I just don't play Civ 6. It's not that Civ 6 is necessarily bad, but Civ 5 is just... It has so many design choices that just work. I just love Civ 5. There are some differences. Civ 6, I think you can get a religious victory. Civ 5, you can't. Religion's meant to be more of a sort of buff. I mean, you can use religion so that if there's an unhappy civilization, I'm pretty sure they convert to you or whatever, but religion doesn't work in the same way it does in Civ 6, but absolutely just get Civ 5. Civ 5 just works, and I agree. Me and Autumn don't agree a lot, but Civ 5 just works. Get Civ 5. Crytek Diablo. Now, Again, the Leper class, we've been over the Leper class. A big fan of the Leper class. But the thing of Crytek, despite having some good quirks, we didn't actually get to use them a lot. I think Autumn had such monopoly on the sort of leper industry, in the leper industry, the leprosy market in Darkest Dungeon. Crytek we didn't really use a lot. And, you know, I did lose 6 people throughout the campaign, 8 including the 2 that revived. But you have to give me credit, we didn't lose a lot of people to the point of where we had people like Crytek just sort of sitting around. Crytek we used mainly to gamble for money, and it kind of worked sometimes, but you didn't get a lot of it because they had the skill gambler quirk, so they would usually win more. But that being said, Autumn's leper monopoly. Crytek, other than that, we didn't really use. We brought them out a couple of times. We might have brought them to a Darkest Dungeon. I don't believe we did. I think we brought Podco to a Darkest Dungeon. I think Crytek we actually just sat around a lot. And for that reason, I think we're going to put Crytek in Benchwarmer, because they quite literally were not being used. They were in the roster a couple of times, a lot of the time, if not being in a tavern. And that's fair. It's not necessarily that they were bad. I was using them specifically for the purpose of raising money. But unfortunately, that means that Crytek didn't really do a lot for the team. They didn't come to the final dungeons of the Darkest Dungeon, which means that Crytek's application to being used wasn't that great. Now, the first Warlord, Dissonant Gaming. The Warlord class, I fucking love. I fucking love a Warlord class. This comes as no surprise to people. And beyond the affection, I mean this in a mechanical sense, I think they're a great class. The reason I think they're a great class is I think that they are they do have a lot of abilities that at first glance might be considered overpowered, but when you actually put them to good use against, difficult enemies, you realize that their great combat prowess actually has to be maintained in some way. Like, as to how good they are relies on to how much support you can give them. So when we talk about the Warlord class, the typical way I'd use it is I use them as a tank. So I put them in position 2 typically. I'd put position 1 for the damage dealer. And in position 2, I have them use the Sentinel ability, which gives a double backline guard and riposte, which means the backline, unless you're getting hit with an AoE move, basically means that you're not... the backline isn't taking damage. And against bosses or enemies that tend to go after the backline to stress them out, such as the Bone Courtier, having that rerouted onto one unit that has an insane amount of HP, as well as has a stress heal move on killing the enemy that does loads of damage if they're below half HP, like, it just works. It works very well. Which I can understand why at first glance, when people see the Warlord on, like, Reddit or whatever, which I've spoken about, people just tend to fucking hate on the class. Like, I think even I've seen on your videos that you've used the Warlord Cerebral, some people in the comments get extremely, like, irrationally mad about the Warlord. And you can tell these are people who haven't used the class, because as someone who has used the Warlord as like a as the backbone of the campaign, I've realized just how much... Hey, let them see. Yeah, it's so weird. We all know you have the hots for the Warlord. Just put them in God tier. I mean, you're not wrong, but also, I'm just explaining about the... Someone stole a fridge from Istanbul. International crisis. Dissonant... sorry, I was talking about the Sentinel. So a lot of the time, people who don't play this class get mad about it, and at first glance, they go, this class is overpowered, it's just another... It's like a... It's just a furry version of an anime class, why use it, blah, 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 blah. But with the Warlord, I realized through using them that you actually need to have very, very sustainable support. The reason why is... For the Man of Arms, for instance, when a Man of Arms does a guard move, they get a prot buff, which means they're taking less damage. So if you keep using that move, you essentially... A move, say for instance, like Tree Branch Smackdown, which can do insane amounts of damage, does like, at best, 10 damage. If you have Fortier, the Houndmaster, when they use the guard, they get a buff. They get the dodge buff, and that is even better than the prot bonus, because the prot bonus still requires you to get hit, so the move potentially can still do stress, whereas with a dodge move, they're not hitting you at all, you don't get any negative effects. You're gaming. You are Darkest Dungeon gaming, right? With the Warlord, the major drawback is because you don't have either of those things, and I'm pretty sure the Warlord's base dodge is still quite low, even if you put on some dodge trinkets like, I believe, a Vanguard Horn, or something like that. What ends up happening is you have now redirected I believe 3/4 of the damage your team takes onto one person. If they hit the backline, it goes to the Warlord, and if they hit the Warlord, it still goes to the Warlord. Which means if you take the Warlord against a boss or an enemy that does loads of damage in several turns, such as the Flesh, you are going to fucking die. If you take, like, oh, you have an Arbalest for your dedicated healing, the Warlord is dead. And that's because someone like the Flesh can dish out, like, what the Warlord's HP pool at a high level is, like, 60 HP. The Flesh can dish out 50, points of damage in one turn across their multiple different sort of orifices. And because of that, it means that the Warlord isn't this just, oh, I put them anywhere and I just win button. You actually need to have a team that works to support them. This means that if you have other classes that are intent on doing, like, doing damage or working in different ways alongside the Warlord, you actually have to replace them so that they support the Warlord. You need dedicated healing, you need stress healing, and you need people that are able to keep the Warlord alive. This ends up being a major drawback, because now all of the damage output you may have had gets reduced to just supporting the Warlord, which means ultimately the Warlord has now become a bit of a drawback for your team, and the main reason of this is that because the Warlord doesn't actually do a lot of damage. I will say the Warlord was overpowered when we first used them, and that's because their Brutal Blow was armor piercing, and it could hit position 3, which meant you could hit the backline, which meant the backline got fucked. Like, it was OP at that point. But when they got nerfed and they got the rework, and it got brought to just hitting the first 2 positions, and they do, 25% damage against size 2, that still doesn't class them as nearly good enough for, dedicated damage. So you'd need one person at the front to do loads of damage, and the 2 at the back to be supporting the Warlord, which pretty much meant that you're hampering your damage output for an increased amount of protective ability. And that's what I really like about the Warlord. I am a sucker for classes that are about high HP and being tanks, so stuff like the Man of Arms, and the Leper does high damage, but similarly about being a tank. I also like the aesthetic of, not just in the horny way, I mean in the way of, the sort of big barbarian with the axe. I do like the design of them, it fits the whole Baressa art style. Ignore the idiots on Reddit, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, they get mad at anime skins or whatever in Darkest Dungeon. I saw someone, when people were talking about this class, right, I'll just briefly remind you, there was a post that was innocently talking about the Warlord, oh yeah, this class is cool, and someone in the comments was like, Darkest Dungeon is ruined, it's just for sex pests now. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about, man? No one is forcing you to, the Warlord isn't even remotely that kind of mod, but no one is forcing you to install this mod anyway. People are fucking funny. But the Warlord class is fucking amazing. Now, Dissonant themselves had a lot of good quirks, we used them a lot, but I wouldn't say they were a god amongst mortals. I'd say that they were at the bottom rung of a Fearsome Warrior. They had a lot of application. Generally, I liked using this class as a tank unit, and really the only drawback to Dis is that we didn't use them a lot, and I think that's because usually they were just being a replacement for Signatelli, who was the sort of head honcho of the Warlords. So we're going to put them in Fearsome Warrior. In this stream, we stand Stinky Dogs. Cerebral, I do have to say, though, I do find it funny the amount of people who see this class and looks at it and goes, that's a dog. Because I think if you put your finger over the horn in the top left of the image, it does look like a giant golden retriever Labrador person. like what is it? Like a Great Pyrenees sort of dog. I can see that, to be honest, with the horns. But it's a good class, I like it a lot, and Fearsome Warrior, Disco's there. Now, Dorpy, God Amongst Mortals, immediately. Man of Arms in the vanilla, if you get rid of all the mods, I sort of use them in the same way I use for Warlord. Their prop bonuses are insane, the buffs they give to the team, like the permanent +10 dodge for the fight is insane, the command, there's a lot of interesting ways to use them, where you can either use them as a damage dealer and stunner, debuffer, or you can use them in position 4 as a just like a sort of armored tank support unit. I don't tend to use them in position 4 because I'd like to have units that actually do a lot of damage in that position, but ultimately the Man of Arms is a great class that I really enjoy. There's also a lot of great skins for it. Now, Dorpy in particular, I put a god amongst mortals, because Dorpy actually, I'm going to put them above Arache, because Dorpy was integral to our success, I believe, during the Volf fight. They were integral during the Prophet fight. I actually remember when we fought the Prophet, we had to leave at one point, and then we went back in, so we were half of us were on 50 stress, and Dorpy saved the team there. And Dorpy in the Darkest Dungeon, I remember, was consecutively crit 17ing the enemies on the riposte, and saved. I'd argue saved the team on the third mission. Was it the third mission? I think it was. It was the second mission. So Dorpy was an invaluable asset as a man of arms there. I actually have no bad words to say about Dorpy's performance or anything. Extremely reliable, and I'm extremely happy that we had Dorpy in the roster. So they go below Autumn, but above Arache in the God Amongst Mortals. Now, Elizabeth. What is there to say? Hold on, let me have a sip of beer. What is there to say about Elizabeth? I sort of had an awakening to the Jester in this campaign. I didn't tend to use Jesters, but I've realised as to why there was... I remember watching an interview. I've watched so many interviews of Red Hook Studios because I just love them. They are my favourite development team. And it was Chris Barassa and Tyler doing an interview, who are like the two head honchos of the studio. And they were joking about how in like a Q&A, the Jester was such a nightmare to balance in terms of how good they were. And I can see why, because when you have a Jester in position 3 with 2 really good bleed moves, and you also have them with a stress heal that does, I think on level 5 with Maxim's heads doing like 15 stress per heal, which is insane numbers. That is rivaling the amount of stress you're taking from some enemies. And you also have like a buff that supplements your crit, it supplements your accuracy, it also, I believe, supplements your speed. And that is just an insane amount. They are the go-to buffing class. They are the Bard. And Elizabeth was extremely useful when we were in the Crimson Court, when we were in the Warrens, when we were in any area where bleed was important, or we needed dedicated stress healing. They were just, you can't describe how invaluable this character was. Elizabeth also did go down into the Darkest Dungeon on the final quest. And when they went down in there, they were sort of the backbone of our plan. I don't know why I said sort of. They were the backbone of our plan. And in that plan, which unfortunately didn't pan out, we came extremely close to saving everyone in the team. Elizabeth was also partially as good as Autumn was, the reason as to Autumn was hitting 59 crits every single time she swung her sword. She kept healing people through a lot of the stress that the Ancestor was dealing. There was a lot of help that Elizabeth was giving. And because Elizabeth was such a great Jester character, ultimately as a result of a class and a result of their just contributions as a character, I think that they belong in a God Amongst Mortals. I will say that they contributed maybe in the general campaign as much as Arache did, but towards the end they were extremely invaluable. I will put them, I think, below Dorpy because Dorpy was such like a hero during their quest. So I think for that reason we should put Elizabeth above Arache but below Dorpy. I feel like Battle Ballad was one of the most used moves. For Jester, it has to be. I like, there is a way to use them as like a dancing damage character, and ultimately every move they have in their roster improves the amount of damage they do on Finale, which means that, you know, using Dirk Stab and the bleed moves and the debuffs and all of this for solos, like, that helps quite a lot. But I always like to use them as a backline, bard, you know, support damage kind of character. Also, the skin Elizabeth had was really cool. I liked it a lot, so they go on God Amongst Mortals. Now, Goth Emma, not our first Highwayman, I believe our third Highwayman, I believe, but they were extremely good. They helped bring down the Wolf in that fight. It was Goth, Emma, Mystic, I think Dorpy was there as well. No, I believe Dorpy was there. But the Highwayman is one of the go-to classes in the vanilla roster. The typical way you see a lot of people use the Highwayman is you use the buckshot blast. I think I don't know what it's called, but it's for one where it's like pretty much it's like the shotgun move that pushes you back one, and then you use it with Duelist Advance, so that way you're getting consistent riposte and consistent high damage on the front line, which makes them quite good. You can also put them into a Mark Party with a pistol shot. You have the Grape Shot Blast. You have a lot of actually good moves that the Highwayman offers in both a support capacity and in a damage dealing capacity. Their dodge is also quite high. Not high enough that on its own it would do a lot, but if you put a lot of dodge trinkets onto that, it means that they can become... They reliably start dodging moves. I believe we brought Goth Emma or Mystic. I think it was Goth Emma to the Countess. And when we brought them to the Countess, I don't believe they got hit very much because of their high dodge. Duelist Advance, point blank shot. Okay, that's it. And it was because of their Duelist Advance that they could get through the dancing, all of this. They were very good. I'd say we put them in Fearsome Warrior. I'd say we'll put them above Dissonant because they were quite good, but we'll put them below Agent because Agent was, you know, Spiritually, Agent was one of the best, but they didn't get to fulfill that potential, unfortunately. I joined in 5 seconds before they struck the Ancestor. Really? Oh shit. You joined at like the high octane moment. That was, oh well. It's so great that I finally fucking beat this game. I know there's like more to play of this game, but I'm taking a break. I'm taking a fucking break. Anyway, now E-Pike. E-Pike tragically was killed in episode 16 because of my failing. Like, there's no excuse. We had... Also, Highwayman is the strongest Crimson Court set. It's stupidly strong all around. Compare trinkets and 45% virtue chance from the set bonus. Oh, wow. That is very good. Yeah, so Highwayman generally is one of the better classes in the roster. I think... I haven't met a single person who regards Highwayman as, like, a bad class. I think that has something to do with... The 4 starting classes, the Crusader, the Highwayman, the Vessel, and the Plague Doctor, are all built to be good without necessarily any drawbacks. Like, the Plague Doctor is a really good support class, you got the Vestal's really good healer, the Crusader's really good tank damage, and the Highwayman's really good damage as well. So these are classes that were built to be good, I think. And they also, design-wise, were the ones that got the most sort of mulling over. They were the 4 design classes that they started with design-wise in the studio. So I think it makes sense as to why. I'm probably going to be playing this game for longer. I threw 2 teams into the dungeon and it came back broken. How far in your campaign are you, Twist? Are you close to the Darkest Dungeon? The funniest thing is that Reynolds starts with a little worse skills setup. Yeah, and one of the worst fucking quirks. So it's like 3 dungeons before you can use the... I think the sanitarium, right? So you end up with him just pocketing so much money that you need. It's fucking annoying. Now, E-Pike. I'm going to say we're going to put E-Pike... In terms of using bounty hunters, I really... It's only me that was the other bounty hunter, and I can only really say that I was used quite reliably. I've like 3 bosses left. Ooh, go on, Twist. You see, I'm actually considering either Benchwarmer or Who the Fuck Are You for E-Pike. I just did not use E-Pike that much. I think in the beginning we must have used E-Pike quite a bit for some manner of boss fights. But ultimately, I just felt like E-Pike wasn't that great in the team. Like, once they died, like, I'm pretty sure I came in after them and I just sort of eclipsed them. I think we'll be respectful to the late memory of E-Pike. I think we'll put them above Crytek on Benchwarmer. Or Grave Warmer, more likely. But E-Pike wasn't that good. And that's a shame, because the Bounty Hunter is also another class that is insanely good. A lot of people... I mean, the go-to use of the Bounty Hunter is the marking, right? The Mark Party, they do insane damage. You put the Evolved Tassel on them, they're really good. But they also do loads of damage against stunned enemies. So if you have a stun party, you can also put them in there and use Finish them for the additional stun bonus. I think there's also some trinkets they get that do a lot of damage against stunned enemies. So on 2 counts, on stuns or marks, the Bounty Hunter is a very good asset to have. Design-wise, they're great as well. I love their skills. Their camping skills are very good. It's just a shame we didn't get to use E-Pike more. I think even when they were alive, we didn't bring them around a lot, and that's because they were quite low level. And the whole reason that episode 16 catastrophe happened is because we took them all out to try and level them all up, and Pierce was the only one that survived. Okay. Next step is Flaming Pluto, another Man of Arms. Flaming Pluto we did take to the Darkest Dungeon. Believe it was the 3rd one. It was the one with the Locust Beacon. And they helped the team quite well. I'd say we can put them at the bottom. I think above Dissonant and Goth Emma, maybe. Actually, I think, no. Let's put them in at the top of a Warrior Fine contributions. Flaming Pluto did a lot to help the team. Very good Man of Arms. I think we did have to change to the crush move with the Morning Star just because of how little damage we were getting done with just the Leper, or with Podco or me. I can't remember exactly who it was. I think I went on the 2nd quest and Podco went on the 3rd one. But we'll put a Flaming Pluto here. Other than that, I think we used Dorpy a lot more. Dorpy, I think I tended to use for a lot of the other things. Flaming Pluto came on, I think, later than Dorpy. Again, another great skin for the Man of Arms. A lot of great Man of Arms skins, but we'll keep them here. Now, Mystic Fox. Mystic Fox did help with the... Let me take another sip. God, when I do these streams, when I talk, my throat gets so sore. Oh, God. Alright. So, we got Mystic. Okay. Mystic is the highwayman we took to fight for Volf. Generally, they were a good class to have around. Performance-wise, they were extremely good highwaymen. I don't know if they were stood up to with Goth Emma. They helped again with Evolve, but Goth Emma I remember taking for the Countess and a bunch of other missions that were quite important. I think Mystic we actually took on the first Darkest Dungeon mission, I do remember, if I remember correctly. Which means that they were very valuable to have. So I think what I will do, I'll put them below Bobberman, because while Mystic was extremely valuable, Bobberman's just sheer value with character in the team, I think, sort of eclipsed that. But Mystic was a good help. They also have another great Highwayman skin there. We use them in the same way we did Goth Emma, with the whole Duelist Advance, point-blank shot, sometimes using the pistol shot sort of move. But I'm happy with Mystic's position, I'm happy with how they helped, and ultimately, they deserve to survive the end. I'm impressed that other than the come unto your maker move, no one died in the Darkest Dungeon. I was fairly impressed by that. You know, patting myself on the back again, because that was the first time I went into those dungeons, and I went in completely fucking blind. The only really thing I knew is there's a maze one that sucks, and there's there's one where you need the trinkets to shield you from the bosses thing. Count Automobilistic, also known as Count Rufus, I'd say a middling individual. Count Rufus was useful at times against the Brigands. I think we also did bring them against the Brigand Cannon. Unfortunately, I don't remember using them for anything other than that. Maybe against the Prophet we used them, but ultimately, I'm not too fond of the Arbalest either. It's quite weird. If I replace them with a Musketeer, for some reason I immediately become more fond of them, but the Arbalest I'm just not a massive fan of. I just find them sometimes to not perform as well as they could. Even though, like, the Musketeer and the Arbalest are essentially the same class, I just find the Musketeer performs better. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the sheer aesthetic that's deciding here. The skin I've given them is quite cool, but ultimately I'm not a massive fan of the Arbalest, and Automobilistic's contributions to the team weren't that astounding. If anything, I'd say more so that what helped us in the boss fights that they were involved in were either Cass or Dorpy, or even Lynx, as we'll see later. Now, Gentleman and Antiquarian, I'd say we put you in middling individual above Beastly Drohan. I'd say this for the reason of every new player to Darkest Dungeon regards the Antiquarian as like the shit class. They see the Antiquarian that does very little damage, they're just purely debuffs and buffs, and they go, this class is shit, I don't want them, I want to bring like the, I want to bring like another Highwayman, I want to bring a Houndmaster, something like that. The rubric Arb and Musketeer are the exact same. Yeah, I know. I've just found that the Musketeer just does better. I don't know why. I just have a better perception of the Musketeer's performance than do the Arbalest. But I know they're exactly the same. They've got the battlefield heal. They've got all of that. Love the Moneymaker girl. Antiquarian as a class is definitely, I think, one of the highest skill classes to use, and I mean that. The reason is, again, new players see it as a class that does no damage, does no buffs, and new players tend to focus purely on damage output more so than like debuff chance or anything that becomes actually more valuable. The Antiquarian, but to the trained eye, is extremely good. It took me, 2 years into playing Darkest Dungeon before I realized that using the Antiquarian to interact with like treasure gave you more treasure. It also gave you more space for the treasure, it gave you the antiques, it gave you the rare artifacts. So on a financial basis, for Antiquarian helps you a lot. I remember before they patched it, you used to be able to take 4 Antiquarians out on low light or completely no light at all, and you could come back with 100,000 gold every time. I've also seen party comps where if you have Antiquarians on high level, if you spam the dodge buff move, they become impossible to hit. The Antiquarian does have a move that gives a lot of dodge bonus to their teammates, and it lasts for about 3 rounds, meaning that, say for instance, you have, I think, 13 dodge at max level, you're giving out a consistent level of 39 dodge, which is just taking away from the accuracy stat of the enemy, which helps quite a lot. So if you times that, by 4, 39 by 4, you're looking at about... Oh god, I just put myself in a position to do math, so shit. You're looking at 156 dodge overall for everyone. I mean, that's purely just spamming dodge, so that's not viable because you have to actually kill the enemy, but still, it worked. The Antiquarian's very good. Gentleman, we just didn't end up using. Gentleman was quite a low-level character that came in late, and they got wiped out in the episode 16 massacre because, again, I was trying to level them up, and I was so close to completing the objective that ultimately they all died. Gentlemen, when they got revived, we used them a couple of times to get some more money, but other than that, they weren't that big of a contributor, and I didn't see the main point in using them. Notion Rejected. I'm going to put them above Arashena Lizard, below Dorpy and Autumn. Notion Rejected. The Plague Doctor is one of the core 4 classes, which makes them, design-wise, the most well-rounded in terms of, like, how good they are against maybe some of the drawbacks the character has. The Plague Doctor, specifically Notion Rejected, the quirks we got for them were insane. I believe we had Early Riser, so we get +2 speed on the torch. Then we had On Guard, which I think gives an additional 2 speed permanently, and then another quirk which gave 2 speed. Now the Plague Doctor already had 9 speed, and then we had a trinket. I think was the Blasphemous Vial, or something else like the Matchman's thing, the Matchman's Torch, that gave us more speed. So by the end of it, we outclassed almost I think if not every single enemy in terms of speed. And because Notion Rejected, as the Plague Doctor, had the double backline stun, and then they had the Noxious Blast, all of this, it meant that we were stunning half of the enemy team every other turn before they could even do anything. Which meant that ultimately the Plague Doctor we had was such a great bonus in bringing along to parties, especially the unholy ones with Bone Courtiers and, you know, a lot of stress nukers that appear in the ruins. They were just a great class. The Plague Doctor's an extremely good support. Again, I became very stun-pilled, as the youth say, this campaign, and when I discovered the double backline stun, I could see why it had limited uses, because ultimately that shit is extremely good. I believe we had a stun chance where ultimately the enemy only had like a 5% chance to resist. We were just really good at it. Now, the Plague Doctor, again, I'm not a massive fan of the skin. I used it just to sort of differentiate. But I enjoyed using this character. It was a good character to have in a team. Now, Lynx, another occultist. Lynx was Bomberman, while being the joke character and being, you know, good. Lynx was actually a very good occultist. We brought them into the Darkest Dungeon on the 3rd quest. No, it was the 2nd quest we brought them along with not with Dorpy. Yeah, it was with Dorpy. And in this quest, I do remember Lynx hit Death's Door, but they were still healing. They were going strong. And Lynx also, quirk-wise, I don't think ever had a negative quirk. They had loads of good quirks, and we locked in a bunch of them that I think gave them speed and really good stuff. But Lynx, ultimately, as the occultist, if we're talking in terms of just general contributions and performance as a class, outclassed Bomberman absolutely. So I'd say Lynx would go into the bottom of... By the by, I can source you a better Mosquito PD skin. Oh, okay. I might check that out then. Yeah, if you just ping me in Gamer Conference with it, I'll check that out. So I'm just looking over my shoulder to make sure the cat isn't attacking the dogs, because that has happened before. I think the cat's still chilling. Okay. Lynx, in terms of utility, was just a lot better than Bomberman. I don't know if I want to put them in Fearsome Warrior. I think I'll put them Fearsome Warrior on the bottom rung. I think I'll do that. Because they were extremely useful. Again, I sort of clocked onto them not being the greatest dedicated healers. Like, they have amazing moments, but ultimately it's not great to rely on them. And it is an active risk you're taking by using them as your only healer. So, towards the end of the campaign, I didn't use occultists quite as much on their own. But Lynx, for the time we were using them, was a great asset to the team. As one occultist to another, I tip my hat to you. I don't know what the dogs are doing, just checking on them. Now, Hedgie, top of Fearsome Warrior. Hedgie was... Jake, what are you doing? Come here, Jake, come here, boys. What's up? I'm streaming right now. What do you want? They're chilling on the stairs. We have a baby gate because Jake got attacked by a dog in, like, November. And, like, it sort of broke his shoulder. And it's mended now, but the way dog bones mend are weird. So his shoulder is, like, sort of, you can feel it sort of poking out. It's okay, he's alright, but we have to be careful with him using the stairs. So we have a baby gate on the stairs, meaning that they can't go down, so they're sort of stuck upstairs with me. What do you want? What do you want, boys? Do you want to go on my bed? Come here. You can watch me stream. Jake, come here. Good boys. There you go. Chill on my bed. I'm going to close my laptop. I'm closing my laptop because I've got my laptop on my bed, and last thing I need them is deleting my thesis, my 5,000 word thesis. Good boys. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, Lynx was a good asset to the team. When we were using occultists, they were good. Towards the end, we needed dedicated healing, but Link's, in terms of occultistry, was very good. Now, Pierce. I don't know. Pierce helped us in the Darkest Dungeon. I'd say let's put them above Fortier and Cass, but below Mystic. The Shieldbreaker is a class I kind of had to I kind of had to grow acquainted with. The reason why I didn't like them, I didn't like the Nightmares. They always caught me off guard. I didn't like the They were a dance unit, and while they do have a lot of bonuses as a dance unit, their armor piercing main attack is great. They're really good for blight parties. I just didn't like the fact they shuffled the party so much. I do tend to err towards the more static parties that get rewarded for being in good positioning, which meant ultimately that I just never had much use for Pierce. Now, after Pierce survived episode 16, they went on to be quite a good asset for our team. We got them up to level 5, and then we took them into the Darkest Dungeon, and they really helped to complete that there. They were extremely good with the dance party, especially the shuffle that the Shambler does, or the Shuffling Horror does the first time you encounter them. You can just sit SB in position 1 and spam Pierce. That's true, but there's so many other moves that make them a really good asset to have. Like, if I just want to spam Pierce and do, like, middling damage, I could just then take a Leper, you get me? Like, the whole greatness to their utility is the fact that they dance, which then just kind of makes them incompatible with me. Because why would you just take the Shieldbreaker just to use Pierce, you know? Because, like, a lot of people just take the Leper just to use, Chop. But ultimately, Chop does so much damage that gets justified in being used. And then also, middling? Not middling, that's unfair. But, like, it's good damage, but I just don't see the point in bringing in the Shieldbreaker just to use that one move. Like, their skill set just kind of requires moving around. I mean, like, it's not a big deal. You put them with a high rim and it works fine. You just push them back and forth. But they just didn't gel a lot with the parties that I had. And ultimately, I didn't find much use for them. But I grew to love the class. I can see why the class is so good. I mean, once we took them into the Darkest Dungeon, Pierce was really good to help out. But for the rest of the campaign, we didn't really use them a lot. So I think that does push them up from middling to a warrior of fine contributions. Smug, what's your take on the Berserk Mask? Ooh, I've seen this on Reddit. I've seen this on Discord. There have been wars fought over this thing. What are the stat buffs again for the Berserk Mask? I remember it being the hot topic of conversation in Steam discussions. This mask. You get 8 crit. Okay. 3 speed. Oh, is that it? Or is it like healing receives you lose as well? Minus 10 virtue, minus 33% heal. Oof, okay. Now, I never really cared about the reduced virtue chance, because I always thought if you get to a point where you need to have a virtue check, you don't have a good comp going. So, minus 10 virtue doesn't really bother me. I'd never let my leper get to a point in which you can get to a virtue check, unless you're deliberately trying to land virtue, but I wasn't. I was always banking on just keeping no stress. And that doesn't affect your stress heal, so that's fine. The 33 heal could be maybe a bit of a problem. I think it's less that the Berserk Mask isn't good, and more so that there's just better trinkets to take on the Leper. Like, 8 crit and 3 speed, there's just better things to take, I think, than that. Nothing specifically comes to mind, but some of the trinkets we were putting on Autumn and Podco, like, I just immediately outclassed that to me. 8 crit and 3 speed to lose 33% healings doesn't seem that much of a trade. Again, if you have a Jester in your party, it doesn't matter at all. You've absolutely... that shit doesn't matter. Of 8 crit and 3 speed, you get that in 1 turn of a buff, so... But yeah, I don't think it's egregious. I just don't see, like... I think the issue people had was, like, why would you take this when you can take other stuff as well? It's my only leper trinket that's not uncommon. There are some uncommon or, like, rare trinkets that outclass legendary trinkets. I mean that, like, genuinely. Because legendary trinkets introduce more drawbacks on the trinkets, I believe. Like, you get more bonuses, but more drawbacks. Whereas some of the rare or uncommon ones, you get no drawback. Like, the positive bonus isn't as big, but you don't get a drawback to it. So sometimes some of the rare and uncommon trinkets are just better. Again, Berserk Mask isn't necessarily bad. It's just, you can take stuff that's better. Then we get to Podco. Podco went into the Darkest Dungeon. I remember we got Podco after the Massacre of Episode 16. And It took us a while to level them up, but we did spend some time leveling him up and other people, so we got the entire roster pretty much up to the max level. I'd say Podco's a warrior of fine contributions. I'd put them above. I'd say for the sheer merit of them. No, because Mystic went into the Darkest Dungeon as well. I think what we'll do, I'll put Podco above Pierce and Fortier and Cass, below Mystic, Bob, and Flaming. I sure remember using Common Stone for 10% damage quite a bit long ago. I mean, like, at the beginning, like, I think that's absolutely viable. Like, if you haven't got any other trinkets, why not? And, again, plus 10% damage with no drawbacks is quite a good thing. So, I'm going to put Podco here. Podco was very valuable. They helped a lot in the Darkest Dungeon quest they were on. They helped a bunch of times when we took them on some of the quests. But their main debut was in the Darkest Dungeon, and that helped us a lot. I do remember they were doing an insane amount of damage in the Locust Beacon quest, and they kept their cool. Again, the Leper class is very good with the self-stress heal and the damage and the buffs, so Podco getting the Leper class is good for them, but ultimately I think this is where they land. So we have a Leper in God Amongst Mortals, we have a Leper in Warrior Fine Contributions, and we have a Leper in the Benchwarmer class. Queen Rodent as another Vestal. Queen Rodent was a Vestal we took out a lot. I'd say we put them up at... It's between these two, a Warrior Fine Contributions or Fearsome Warrior. I remember we did take Queen Rodent into the Darkest Dungeon on one of the first quests, if not the second quest. I'd say let's put them above Lynx, below Dissonant in a Fearsome Warrior. They were a great healer to have around in the team, to bring around, and I do specifically remember having them around for a long while and bringing them around on a lot of different quests throughout the main campaign, not just the end with the Darkest Dungeons. So yeah, I'm happy with Queen Rodent being here. Again, Vestals have great stuns and consistent healing that's not as big as the potential of the Occultist, but it also doesn't have the potential drawback of not healing at a really, really bad time. Witty Raptors we lost in the Massacre of Episode 16. I'd say we put them below Beastly Jaw. In fact, I'd put them as a bench warmer. We only really used them to level up, and eventually they just died and we never used them again. Actually, no. Who the fuck are you? I don't even know who Witty Raptors is. They're like on my Twitch follow, so I put a bunch of people to Twitch follow in there. We didn't use them a bunch. When we did use them, they died. You go here. Witty Raptors is at the bottom. Who the fuck are you? Laloli, Butcherbird, I'd say we brought you a lot. Let's put you above Dissonant, Queen, and Lynx, and below Goth Emma. Actually, no, above Goth Emma because he brought you a bunch for a lot of the Crimson Court missions. We'll put you below Agent and below Hedgie. Actually, did I speak about the Crusader? Did I skip over that? I feel like I skipped over Hedgie. I don't think I spoke about them at all. I think I got distracted by something in chat. Ooh, Ben. If I would have been there, you would have needed a whole new tier. Things would have been different. Yeah, you would have been below who the fuck are you. Because you would have been that bad. But thank you for the smug description of 33 months. My God. You're 3 months away from 3 years of watching me, Ben. How do you feel? How do you feel, Ben? How does that feel? I've been doing this for 3 years now. Almost. In June. Technically, I started end of May, beginning of June. Actually, no, it was beginning of June I started, but the streams weren't great. I technically think that my streams were mainly, like, started in July when I was streaming off Xbox. That's so fucked up. But welcome, Ben. You know, it's weird, Ben. I had you in the anime intro, like, that I made, and I think that's because I assumed you'd get in on the roster, but you never got a character. And that's tragic. It would have been great to have you in this. I don't know if you would have got Abomination, but 3 years of smug? Jesus Christ, what kind of hell is that? I know. How do you think I feel, Bob, man? I've been around this guy for fucking 21 years. Anyway, let's talk about Hedgie. We didn't talk about Hedgie earlier. I think I skipped one. Hedgie is the Crusader class. The Crusader class is one of the classic four, so again, they're quite strong with very few drawbacks. The beginning Crusader you get, Hedgie was Reynold, pretty much. And they start with Kleptomaniac, they start with some bad quirks, but the Crusader is a powerhouse. So if you take them to the ruins, you have insane amounts of unholy damage going on. You also have a very good stun. A lot of people use Zealous Accusation, which can be good to finish off 2 enemies at the front that are low, but I tended to just use the sword to take out 1 enemy instead of just do low damage to both. It's better to take out 1 enemy and only have to deal with 1 instead of have to deal with 2 on low health, because they still do the same amount of damage. They also had a stress heal, which, in fairness, I neglected to use at the beginning, but once I started using towards the end, I could see the application for it. They can double as a support healer. If you, for instance, take Smite and Stunning Blow, and then you take the like the stress heal and the regular heal, they can be quite a good frontline support healer as well as a tank and someone with good damage. Hedgie specifically was so good because we had Unholy Hater on them, and then we had two more trinkets, I believe, that added on top of the damage they were doing. So that meant taking them to the ruins, we were doing like an additional 100% damage to unholy enemies. So Hedgie was decimating the enemy team, and that's on top of the smite move already having Smite move already having, I think, 35 against Unholy. Why would you not take Holy Lance? Holy Lance is definitely a good move because I know a lot of people. I don't know a lot of people. More so that I know that a lot of people have used it to start in position 3 and then move up 2, and Holy Lance does a lot of damage. And ultimately, looking back, I think I should have used that more. The main reason was I don't think Hedgie's speed was that great, meaning that I was going to have support units at the front of the rank that wouldn't actually be able to do anything on their first turn because Hedgie's speed wasn't that great. I could be wrong about that. I might actually think that Hedgie's speed was that good, but I do think it was a complete miss to not give them Holy Lance. That would be me more often than should. But, you know, like, Holy Lance is a good move. I think I did neglect that a bit. I definitely neglected the stress heal, and I learned throughout the campaign that I need to bring more stress healing abilities. But Crusader, Hedgie's contributions as a Crusader class were amazing. They were genuinely a terrific class. The only thing that holds them back from a God Amongst Mortals is we didn't get to take them to the Darkest Dungeon. If we took them to the Darkest Dungeon on the first quest, they would have been insane. I think they would have been above Dorby, potentially below. But because they died 2 episodes before the finale, I just didn't think it was justified to put them in a God Amongst Mortals. You can take advantage of Crusader's low speed to do a Lance dance. Position 3 uses forwards 1 and Crusader uses Lance. So if I put them in position 2, okay, but typically the classes I took Crusader with would have been like what? If it wasn't a Warlord sort of defensive stack, it would have been like the typical Vestal Plague Doctor. So I would have pushed them. It just wouldn't work logistically for the parties I had. But again, like, I absolutely concede that I should have used Holy Lance more. It's a very good move. And I apologize that I missed out on Hedgie because Hedgie tragically died against my absolute fumbling of the Fnatic. Cerebral, you were there for that, where we almost got squad wiped by the Fnatic. And it was a shame. It was a massive, massive shame because Hedgie was such a good player in the team. And if we had brought them to the end, I think they would have really helped out. But anyway. Signatelli. Second place. I'd say second place. I'd put them above Autumn if Autumn wasn't the one that had killed the final boss. Signatelli we got quite early on, I believe, as a Warlord. Signatelli's Sona character also uses a brown and yellow color scheme, so that's why I picked this skin. Subscribed at tier 2 for 6 months. I subscribed for 7 months. Thank you. I don't know nothing. You've smug-scribed for 7 months now. How do you feel? Do you feel great? Do you feel amazing? You're supporting... Yeah, I was about to say you're supporting greatness. Anyway, Signatelli as a Warlord was invaluable, which is a word I've used a lot for the people at the top here. I genuinely think without them we would have suffered a mass... Horrid? You feel horrid? Ban this guy. Get him out. Yeah, Signatelli was an invaluable member of a team that we brought along to so many different fights and boss fights as a Warlord. I believe they joined after Suneo did, but before Dissonant. Signatelli, we took into the Darkest Dungeon at the end. Again, just generally the Warlord class is so good for the sort of parties that I use that the party comps that Signatelli was in, they just never failed to do well. The stress heal attack, they had the double backline guard, we had the horn rush in case we had to rush forward in the case of a shuffle. It was just good. Again, the Warlord class is kind of weak against some bosses, unless there's like a better comp to take, but ultimately I find that if you're going to take the Warlord to a fight against like the Flesh, for instance, do not, for the love of God, take Sentinel, because you are just rerouting 75% of the damage onto one class that you likely can't heal fast enough. Again, on the private playthrough, I had Homevarn the hero, who was a Warlord, that looked like Dissonant, and we took them to a Flesh fight. You can see it in the third channel video, and in one turn they went from 60 HP down to like 1. That's just how much damage the Flesh can do on top of DoE damage that it does. A dot damage it does on top of it. But Signatelli, as a Warlord class, never failed. I don't remember a time when they ever got afflicted or necessarily were letting the team down in regards to missing. They did their job and more so. and their presence at the end fight, I think, was absolutely justified. There was absolutely no way I was going to sacrifice Signatelli. One, because they're a Warlord, and I'm not going to kill a Warlord, but also two, Signatelli had come so far and deserved to live to the end regrettably, alongside Autumn, who also was really good. So Signatelli absolutely gets second top spot for being the best Warlord I've ever had. And also, their quirks, while not the best, did supplement their ability to hold the line. Their stun, their hard noggin also made it so we weren't losing guard against stun moves. Just ultimately a good class to have around Signatelli. Small Tide Bench, we brought them as a Vestal to the last Darkest Dungeon. Other than that, I think they're on the same level as Queen Rodent. I think we'll put them above Queen Rodent for the sake of they were at the Darkest Dungeon, and they paid the ultimate price in the end by getting sacrificed. But ultimately, like, I found that they played a consistent healing well. Actually, you know what? I think we'll move these two down to below Flaming, but above Bobberman. These two came to the Darkest Dungeon, they were great contributors, they helped heal the squad, but ultimately I didn't find that beyond that in the general campaign they were that essential. They were essential, but they didn't do anything remarkable. They were contributing fine, they were doing well, they were good to have in the team ultimately, and I'm thankful for their presence. Now me, Smug Rubric, such a handsome, talented guy, where would I put myself in terms of my performance? Let me ponder this on a sip of beer. Genuinely, because I could just put myself at the top of the leaderboard as a joke, but I think genuinely, if we talk in seriousness about how I did as the bounty hunter, my quirks were really good. I don't think I had a negative quirk that really affected anything. I had Eldritch Hater, Eldritch Slayer. When we went into the Locust Beacon, no, it was the second fight, when we went into the fight against the Templar Warlords, we did well there. My Smug Rubric was doing a lot of damage. We had, me punching pretty much solid brick walls and stunning them. Hell. What does hell mean? I do not know nothing. In hell. He's in hell. What the fuck? I'd say... God, I want to put myself up here, but I don't want to seem pretentious, because I genuinely think that I contributed a lot, even outside of the Darkest Dungeon quest. But I came in quite late. I don't know when I came in. I think I came in to replace E-Pike. And when I came in to replace E-Pike, that meant that I didn't really have... I think by the time E-Pike died, we really only had Crimson Court bosses left. Or more so, I think we had bosses left that I didn't get taken along to. So I think we'll put me above Dis and Lynx, but below Goth Emma. My time to contribute was limited, but ultimately I did help out in the Darkest Dungeon, and I helped out... I'm sure in other instances as well, and that secures me in Fearsome Warrior on the sort of lower end. Warrior Fine contributions, I feel like I did a little bit more than just, sort of consistent helping. There were some nutty moments I had during that boss quest of the Darkest Dungeon. So, there you are, Fearsome Warrior. But, unfortunately, below Autumn, which I'm not going to hear the end of. Because I could put myself up here to be a little wicked little man, but I'm not going to, because I'm an honest creature, and I would never... wouldn't give in to the self-nepotism, Now, this guy, Soundwave, we're going to put him above Witty Raptors, because Witty Raptors was, we didn't use at all. We used Soundwave sometimes as a backup healer, but ultimately, I don't really remember them. They died to the Fnatic, that's about it. Steven was a tragic case, Comphoto, because he was our Dismas, right? And he survived till the end. But what sucks is that he died in episode 4, episode 5. I think it's episode 6, actually, maybe. Or probably episode 4. And he died to a regular fucking, bone enemy. It sucked. And we didn't get him back till, what? Agent died in episode 21. We didn't get him back until, episode 23, 24. We didn't get him back for ages. And by that time, we didn't really have much use for him. I think he was, level 4 or something. So, honestly, I think he's at the bottom of middling individual. He really just didn't contribute much. We tried to level him back up, but by the time he got back in, we just didn't have much use for him anymore. Tangled, I'd say... I'd say let's put him at the top of a middling individual. No, he's playing a Jester class. But Jester class doesn't matter if his contributions weren't that great. I think we brought Tangled to a Darkest Dungeon. I can't remember. I can't remember. I think we brought a Jester along for the stress healing. We must have. For that, I'm going to assume we did. I'm going to put them above... I'm going to put them below Podco. I'm going to put them here. Jester's very valuable with really good buffs, and I believe we did bring them onto the Darkest Dungeon, because I do remember this actually. We had Tangled and Elizabeth signed up for the Darkest Dungeon quest, so I do remember bringing them. So they must have come along to one of them. I can't remember which one it was, but a Jester in that predicament with stress healing and buffing is extremely valuable, but ultimately I think they come below Podco, because Podco was, the main damage dealer there, and they also come below Flaming Pluto and Lynx. I think out of all of the Darkest Dungeon heroes that went, they'd be at the bottom rung of that. Suneo. Suneo was a good Warlord tank, was also a bit of a comedy character in the sense of they're literally an anthropomorphic Highland cow person, and they had the Zoophobia quirk, which I don't think we ever removed until like very late in the campaign. So I'd say Warrior Fine contributions, we'll put them... Let's put them above Mystic. Because Suneo throughout the camp... I think Suneo was the first Warlord we got. So consistently they were a very valuable member of the team. But once Signatelli turned up, like I don't remember using them that much. Because I think Signatelli was a higher level when we got him. And then just ultimately he was off to the races of how good he was being. So yep. Suneo goes solidly in a Warrior of Fine contributions. Then we have Vulpine Cortex. I'd say Vulpine Cortex as a Plague Doctor would go in a Fearsome Warrior, because they weren't as good as Notion Rejected, but they did have a lot of good quirks that helped them out. I also remember we took them to the Darkest Dungeon quest, and they were emboldening Vapor on one of us. I think it might have been during the Locust Beacon mission. It might have been that, because I remember we were doing a bunch of stunning, or it might have been during my one. But either way, I think we will put them... I think I'll put them above me. I think we'll go above me, below Goth Emma, and we'll do that because they were valuable. Again, Plague Doctors just work so well. Emboldening Vapors was another move that wasn't initially had limited uses. Initially, you could use it endlessly, and you were giving permanent plus 25% damage buffs to your damage dealers. So it used to be like 6 years ago when the game first came out, or 7 years ago rather. When the game first came out, one of the ways to one-shot the boss so that you didn't have to kill one of your team members is if you brought 3 Plague Doctors with you to the Darkest Dungeon with just a leper at the front, and you endlessly buffed them, like, you could kill the boss in one-hit swing, pretty much. And that lands them squarely here, because that move is very useful. It was limited, but they were a valid member of the team. They were helping out a lot, and they certainly were a cut above the rest, I think. Plague Doctor is just a very good class to have. Zalarian, I'd say middling individual. Actually, let's put them at the very bottom of fine contributions. We brought them around a lot for unholy missions, but when we got to the middle end of the campaign, from the middle onwards, we didn't use them a lot. I think once the main bosses were dead, I don't remember taking them for anything else. The anointed class I do like a lot. I think it's not a one-to-one adherence to the Barassa design. It does have the dark eyes and the heavy lines and everything. There is just some differences in how it's done. I can't really describe it. I think it's just the minutiae of how it's drawn that you can tell it's a modded class. But T-Chep's sad. The bird guy gets put some warrior fine contributions. Also, hello T-Chep, nice to see you. The Anointed is a good class that is like a tank healer as well. They have, every time they heal or guard their teammates, they give a little heal to their team, and then you get a big heal to themselves. They also have a move that heals everyone else but themselves, so it's kind of like the Vestal All Heal that's a little bit more effective, but it doesn't actually cover yourself. You also have a move with your sword that hits, and when it hits, you also get a self-heal. I think the one downside to that is really you could only have this guy in 2 positions. You could have them at the front, or you could have them at the back. And the reason I say that is because a lot of their support moves you can only use in the back 2 positions, and their frontline moves you can only use in the front 2 positions. The only real move that transcended all 4 positions was the move that gave like a prop buff and a speed buff. I can't remember. But there was just a lot of damage moves that were really good for the Anointed, and, you know, a potential to act as a dedicated healer. I only really brought them in short dungeons as a dedicated healer, at a push a medium dungeon, because the attrition of a long quest just wouldn't last under that sort of healing. But I think you could absolutely equip the Anointed to be a long-form dedicated healer. Anointed's debuffs were omnipositional. Oh, they might have been, yeah. Yeah, I think they were. But then it was, what was it? If you wanted, I think, the full operation as a support class, you had to be at the back, I believe. I can't remember, God. There was something where I had to put them at the back for their moves, or something, where if I wanted to put them at the back for their main healing or whatever. I think I might be chatting shit, I don't know, but I do remember something that was necessitating maybe a move to the back, which meant that I couldn't use the front. I think it was the move that pulls someone to the front or something. I can't remember, but yeah. Anyway, the Anointed class is a good class. I enjoy it a lot. I'm glad I used it. But yeah, in regards to the Zalarian's execution, I don't remember having that many great quirks, and I didn't bring them along a lot. Sometimes I just found it was better to just take a dedicated healer with a stun move instead of just a slightly better healing with some prop boosts and all of that. We brought them to the shield, the what is it, like the Guardian fight, just to get out the way of the shield or whatever. But other than that, like, no, I didn't really find other ways to use them. So that should be everyone, I believe, in the roster. That should be everyone that's in the list. We have, if we go from bottom to top, we have in last place Witty, Soundwave. So the two, who the fuck are you people? Soon we have followed on the bench. We have Crytek and Epike. We go to middling individuals. We have Steven, Beastly Drohan. I'll put Steven above Beastly Drohan, but Beastly Drohan, Steven, Gentleman, Automobilistic. We have a Warrior of Fine Warrior of Fine Contributions. We have Zalarian, Cassowary, Fortir Austin, Pierce, Tangled, Podkotima, Mystic, Suneo, Bobberman, Queen Rodent, Small Tide, Binch, Flaming Pluto. In Fearsome Warrior, we have Links Alike, Dissonant Gaming, Smug Rubric, haha, it's me! We have Vulpine Cortex, Goth Emma, Lowly, also known as Seal in the community. We have Agent, T70, Hedgy Gamer. Then, in A God Amongst Mortals, the top 6 of the campaign, we had Arache, the Duchess, the Blood Monarch. We had Elizabeth, the Fool of the Gods. We had Notion Rejected, the Soul Anatomist. Dorpy, the Crit 17. Signatelli. We had, I think I called them God Palisade. I can't remember the nickname I gave them. And then we had Autumnal Anarchy, the Bane of the Cosmic Gods, right here at the top. I command Season 3 to come forth, not for any reason other than me not being in Season 2. Next time we do Season 3, which will definitely be in, like, at least, I think, around a year's time, because I don't know what I'm going to do next, we'll have more people in the roster to take. I think what I'll also do is I'll take a mod that widens the roster. That way we can have more people feel included in being there. Also means we have less logistics. I'll take a look at that. We'll see. I don't want to then just make a laughing stock of the sort of hero barracks, but we'll take a look. So that is the tier list of Season 2, guys, of all the contributions, the class aspects, and generally their performance tallied up to take a look at. I am a little bit disappointed we didn't use a lot of the mods, and I think we had like the Bogatir, the Salamander, the Cataphract, and I think it's because a lot of those mods are dancing classes, and again, I just tend to not use those classes. It's not necessarily that they're not good, it's just it doesn't coalesce with my sort of playstyle. But I think next time we do this, I'd love to have some more modded classes. Will I want to have the Warlord in? I generally don't know, like genuinely. The main reason why is I don't know if I'd want... I had dinner and came back and you're still talking about this game. Get a line. You're so mean! What I was saying is that the Warlord, I don't know if I want to bring, and the reason is that I feel like as good as the Warlord was, and not necessarily because of like, oh, they're overpowered or anything, I just tended to use them way too much. They became an extreme like backline. They just became a backbone that was a very consistent value, and it didn't really encourage me to actually mix up my team compositions as well. Also, I'm irrationally scared of getting a Warlord killed, so like I think if I didn't have a Warlord in the game, the stress I feel when playing it would go down by at least like 50%. So I'll take a look. I do like the Warlord. I think it's useful. I encourage people to use it. I just felt like maybe I was using it too much, but I'll take a look. That being said, there are other mods as well to be used that are made by Cerebral and also other classes that I will potentially take a look at in future. For instance, on the private playthrough I had the Viper, I had the Entrenched, I had the Commandant, I had loads of stuff. As your number one Dungeoneer, play a different game. I'll take you down into a bench warmer if you don't shut the fuck up. I have the power right now. The stream isn't over, Autumn. You have to save your bragging rights until I'm unable to revert it. Play smart, Autumn. Which I know is hard for you because you never play smart because you're dumb. But rethink your strategy here. But I was very happy with a lot of the modded classes. I was happy playing with the Crimson Court on. It was genuinely a big relief to clear that. It was a lot of fun. I think next time we do this, we will have Colour of Madness on. I think the only real quest requirement would be to beat the Miller, and then I think the rest of it is just a sort of endless mode. We may add in maybe Sunward Isles, or we might add in the Sunward Isles, or we might add in something like the, what is it? There's plenty of different mods that you can use of different sort of locales and areas. I think there's one being developed for the Butcher's Circus as well. That's like against AI mod, which I'd like to see as well. I will say, if you want to try my mod list, I would recommend trying the one-of-a-kind rules, aka not allowing duplicates. Does that mean, like, you just can't have duplicate heroes in your roster at all, or, like, in the party, like, itself? Because I don't think I was ever in a position where I had two of the same class. Or maybe Goth Emma and Mystic, but that's about it. But yeah, maybe. Maybe we need to change the house rules as well. We'll see. I mean, like, this is not going to be something new that comes around the corner. This is going to be, like, a long way in the future we're going to touch this game again. And who knows, maybe like a whole new area will be. In your roster at all, at least how I've been doing it. God damn, that would be quite a tall order. I think we did have that originally, but we can only have one of a kind. No, we had it originally that whatever hero you get, you have to stick to, but that felt quite bad because whatever roll of the dice I got just sometimes didn't work for my hero, so I had to change them. But we could potentially incorporate that. But anyway, guys, I've really enjoyed talking about this. I know it's been a different pace of stream, and I think this is definitely a stream people have just had on in the background more so than actively engaging with. But I've really enjoyed Season 2. I've enjoyed playing this game. It's no exaggeration to say that Darkest Dungeon, both creatively and just in terms of enjoyment, has affected me so much. And it's not even I tend to get affected by games that are quite narrative-driven, narrative-focused. This is a game that is quite, like, the narrative is more so just something you find in the background as you play the game. And mechanically, it's more so what really sells Darkest Dungeon. Mechanically, and I guess also visually, artistically, it is just such a masterpiece that I really enshrine. It's insane to me. This game came out in 2015. It's almost 10 years later, and there are so many people still playing this game. It boggles my mind, and it deserves all of its success as an indie roguelike game. It's such high quality. I love it, and there will definitely be a video on this game at some point. It's not the current one that I'm working on, but... Ooh, who followed? Let me see. Sulfuric Astrid. I know who that is. Tug 2... I wonder who Sulfuric Astrid is. Something artistic merit trumps shiny graphics. I don't like the Darkest Dungeon 2 as 3D animated. That doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just doesn't fit my taste. I do love the PNG sort of aspect of this game. It's just like a PNG puppet show going on, and the fact that it's just that and it achieves so much visually is insane to me. But yeah, anyway, how long have I been streaming? We almost hit 2 hours. I'm surprised we didn't. We almost hit 2 hours. 1 hour 40. So before you all go, and before I go and then paste this list off into the Discord channel, I will quickly, for anyone who's potentially new here, I'll put the Discord in the chat. And what we're going to do, we're going to move on to the Vote of Thanks. And the Vote of Thanks is the little credit sequence I was working on that talks about each of the characters, what they contributed, and how it ended for them. I thank everyone for watching. I genuinely I'm really happy that you guys enjoyed this series. And I think after Darkest Dungeon Season 2, I think beforehand we had about, like, on average 5 viewers a stream. And ever since Darkest Dungeon Season 2, for the most part, every stream has had, like, minimum 10 viewers in it. So it's done a lot. I'm really happy you enjoy it. Again, I play this game regardless. I enjoy this game regardless. But to know that other people enjoy it as well is great. And I do recommend that people here, if you aren't playing Darkest Dungeon, play Darkest Dungeon, and you will fucking love this game. It will be torture. It will be hell. You'll hate it for a bit, but you will also love it at the same time. Anyway, I want to thank you guys very much for watching. And I will let you know what I'm going to stream next week. I want to thank Sulfuric Astrid for the follow. I Don't Know Nothing. Benny Squid X for the Resmug subscription. Angel and Autumn for the Resmug subscriptions as well. Oh, Angel gifted a sub as well. I'm so sorry. I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't see that at all. That completely slipped my mind. Thank you for gifting one to Mystic. I appreciate it. And Autumn for the Resmug subscription. Funk and Gordiciano for the follows. And I look forward to the next stream. And I'll see you around. Bye-bye, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Ocean of stars, lo, an angel they see, untouched by the war that they waged, laying low by their stars, a people wounded but free. rise and listen as one. The land that they were promised is near. And though I've gone just ash in the wind, one life surrendered so yours can begin. Courage, my children, this is your song. I am the earth, I will make you strong. The seasons they turn, memory fades, but when my name has been lost to the grave, I will sustain you year after year. I will protect you when dangers appear. And though I am gone, just ash in the wind, one life surrendered so